Okay, hello and welcome to module number 2 for RTVB 1302 Computer Apps for Media Production. So today we are going to get into Premiere Pro. So what you see right here are the instructions for module 2, and we're just going to go through these step by step. So that said, once you have this up, the first order of business is to download the Project 1 package. So when you click on this, you're going to be taken to a Google Drive folder. The easiest way to get this is to right up here on this drop down, click on this, and just click download. When you do that, what happens is it will zip all these files up into a folder and then download them into your downloads folder. I've already done that, so we don't have to sit through that. But what I will show you next is this. So I'm going to open up an Explorer window. This will look a little different on a Mac. And I'm going to go to the folder in which I have saved them. So I've put them into Module 2 on my personal hard drive. Again, not working from locally on any computer desktop or download drive. I put them onto my own hard drive. And so now we have a zipped folder. So if you've never unzipped a folder before, it's pretty easy. You can right click, and in Windows, you're going to select extract all. The process is a little bit different on a Mac, but it's pretty straightforward. And you're just going to extract it to the same location in which it's at and let the computer work its magic. So once it's complete, I'm just going to X out of that. You'll notice that you have a new folder next to your zipped up folder. If I open that up, open it up again, here are all the files in which I need to work with for this project. So that's great. What I can do, and I'm just going to do this very quickly, go back to where I was. So this is now just extraneous. You can keep this if you want, but typically it's just extraneous data, so you don't need it. I'm going to delete that just to save on space on my hard drive. Okay, so let's get into Premiere Pro. So for those of you who are unaware, Premiere Pro is a video editing program. It has been around for decades now, and it is one of the major players in the video editing space. Another major platform is DaVinci Resolve. Avid was a major player. They are losing market share. Another one is Apple Final Cut or Final Cut Pro. If you know Premiere Pro, you can translate these skills into a lot of other video editing platforms. So I'm going to select New Project on our home screen here. And we're going to get an interface that's going to ask us a couple of questions. So we're going to call this the Red Door Pantry Project. And it's going to ask me where I want to save it. I want to choose my location. And this project is going to be used over multiple modules, so I'm not going to put it in my Module 2 folder. I'm just going to put it in the master folder here. Okay, so I have that. I'm not worried about a template. I'm not worried about any of these settings. I'm just going to click Create. Okay. So my computer is running a bit slow, but hopefully it'll catch up here in a moment. My workspace is a little wonky right this moment, so I'm going to come in here to Window, Workspaces, and I'm going to select Editing. And at that point, hopefully it will catch up with me. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to need to do is import our footage. There's several ways to do this. The easiest way that I have found is just to simply come down here into the project panel and double click. And when you do, you'll get that dialog box that pops up. I'm going to come into my Module 2 folder, and it is possible to import an entire folder at once. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to import the folder. And for this right here, I'm just going to click OK. It's asking me about a Photoshop file that is contained within there. And you'll notice that I have one folder. Now, in Premiere Pro, folders are called bins. If you want to call it a folder, you can, but if you're speaking with someone professionally, you'll probably hear the word bin, B-I-N. So we have one bin, and contained within this, we have all of our footage. We also have another bin with audio, and we have a graphic. So those are all of the assets that we're going to need to complete this project. So the next task, number 3 in the assignment, is to organize all the media into separate bins. So we already have a pretty good start here. I'm going to make 2 more bins, and I'm going to move all of the footage. So all of these .mp4 files, these are all video clips. I'm going to move those into a separate bin. I'm going to make a graphics bin as well. I'm going to move this red door pantry logo into there. So to do that, it's pretty straightforward. What I do is I come down here and I'm just going to click on the new bin icon. And I get a new bin. So I'm just going to call this graphics. And it's very simple, just like operating in Windows or Mac. You can just drag and drop. And then I'm going to make a new bin called footage. Now you'll notice what I just did is I actually put this outside of my master folder here. I want to get that back into where it started just so I can keep track of everything. So I'm just going to take and drag all of this footage up there. Now to put this back into where it originally came from, I just drag it into here, and now the footage bin is where it needs to go. I'm going to make one more bin that we've not used yet, but it's going to be called sequence. So every time that we make a new timeline, which are called sequences, we'll actually put those in there. So one of the main reasons for this exercise is to show you how to stay organized within a video editing project. This is a very simple video editing project. They can become quite complex, and if you're not organized with all of your assets, it can be very hard to find certain things, and it can really slow you down. So it's important to stay organized from the beginning. So this is a very bare bones way to organize a video editing project. So everything is completely in its place. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to rename files. So your job here is to go through and to go through essentially the footage, and I'm going to just select the first the first clip, and I'm going to double click on it. Actually, I'm not going to double click on the name because it actually wants me to rename it. I don't want to do that yet. What I want to do is I just want to double click it one time. And when I do, you'll see that I have a picture that appears. So I got a little bit ahead of myself. Just want to show you a quick layout. Okay, so down here we have the project panel. And the project panel, its main purpose is to show us all of the assets and allow us to select them. Up here, this is our source window. And whatever we click on within the project panel, it will display in the source window. I can double click on one of these and I can come up here and I can play. Okay, so down here we have our timeline. And our timeline is, the timeline window is where we see our sequences. And then up here is our program window, and program is where we actually view what is being played in the timeline. So that's how that works. So the first order of business is actually to go through and name this footage. So what I'd like you to do is go through and watch the footage. We'll give you just a little bit of a heads up about what this project is about. It's a commercial, and it's for this nonprofit organization that what they do is they have, it's the same concept as like a free lending library where you see these little kiosks around. They even have one on campus where you can put a book in there if you no longer want it, and then if you want to read a book, you go and look, and if there's one you want to read, you can take it. Well, this organization does the same thing with food, and it's basically a grassroots movement to feed hungry community members. It's called the Red Door Food Pantry. So this commercial is a visual story of a father and son going to stock the food pantry on a Saturday afternoon or whenever. And it's just a little sequence of them doing that. So we have a variety of shots, and I'll just play through some of these. So we have the car driving. So they're driving to the food pantry. We have some interaction within the car. Let's see here, we have a nice little moment between the father and the son. We have a camera with inside the food pantry so you can see what's happening. So yeah. So what we're going to do is go through and just label these shots. And so I would say that I would call this one wide shot, father and son, or dad and son outside pantry. And so to rename it, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click one time right here on the name, and I'm going to use abbreviations WS for wide shot, MS for medium shot, CU for close up. So wide shot, dad and son outside pantry. Okay, so I'm going to just move this over a little bit just so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to do one more here, and let's see if I can find a different shot. So we're going to call this close up stocking the pantry. What I would like you to do is actually go through and watch this footage. Part of any successful video editing project is that the editor goes through and they watch the footage so they can see what they have to work with. Pretty important. So once you go through, and I'm not going to do all of this right now, but once you go through and label all these, the next part of this is that you are going to make what's called a proxy file. So you may be wondering, what is a proxy file? So this footage that you're working with is relatively compressed, and it's 1080p or full HD footage. It is on the quality spectrum, it's on the lower end, and we do that just for ease of use among students. It's easy to download, it's easy to work with. It's not uncommon to work with 4K footage, and we're talking in terms of resolution: 4K, 6K, 8K footage that is recorded at higher bit depth and also higher data rates. That said, footage can get very unwieldy. It can get into the realm of gigabytes of storage per minute of footage. So it is very heavy in terms of file size. Not everyone has a computer that can handle such file sizes. And the way around that is what's called a proxy workflow. So proxies, what they are smaller copies, so usually more compressed and usually lower resolution, so smaller copies of the original file, in which the program, in this case Premiere Pro, can work with in place of the full res or the full resolution camera originals. So I will say that these are not camera originals, but we're going through this process just so you can see how to make a proxy. It's very simple, very straightforward how to do this. And so the way you do it is you're going to basically highlight all of your footage. So you're going to right click, and when you right click, you're going to have a context menu come up, and you'll see I see selection for proxies. So we have proxy, create proxies. So I'm going to select create proxies, and it's going to give me some selections here. So frame size half. Sure, why don't we do that? We'll do half the frame size. ProRes QuickTime proxy, that's fine. I'm not going to watermark this. If you wanted to, you could. And then location, original, next to original media in proxy folder. So what's going to happen on my hard drive, it's going to make a folder called proxy, and it's going to place all of these files that it creates inside there. I'm going to select OK. And when I do, another program is going to open up called Adobe Media Encoder. So Adobe Media Encoder is great because it can actually render files for you and allow you to keep working on your project while something's rendering in the background. So this is what Adobe Media Encoder looks like. And what it's doing right now, it's going through and creating these proxies, or these proxy jobs, I should say. It's not actually made anything yet, but it's getting ready to make them. So it's going through each of these files and figuring out where they need to live once they're rendered out, what the settings are, and it's going to do that for each one of them. So if I drop this down, and you can look at my dialog window here, creating proxy jobs. So it's going to do this for a few minutes, and I will come back once it's finished. Okay, it looks like Media Encoder is done creating the jobs, and it's already started to go through its process. So you'll see that I have a stop button here and a pause button. If for some reason it doesn't automatically start this process, there's a play button in which you can start. So it makes these relatively quickly. And it has just a few more to go. So once it's finished, It's very uneventful. Nothing will happen. It'll just basically stop its process. You know that each one was successfully created because of the green check mark. If something went wrong, it would have a red X right here. Okay, so let's go back and let's just take a look at our hard drive to see Okay, so you'll notice that now we have a new folder, and it's called Proxy. Now, as far as actual file size, I don't know if these are any smaller than our original, simply because we were working with pretty compressed footage. But the idea here is I just want you to see this process. If this were full res, high-end media, I can guarantee that this would be much smaller than the original. You'll notice that the files that we renamed are now renamed here too. So that's why I think it's important that you go through and you name these files what you want to do, what you want them to be, before you actually go through and create your proxies. Okay, so let's get rid of that for right now. Okay, so I'm looking at the list, and next what we have to do is we're going to insert some columns into a project panel. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually widen this out so you can see there are all sorts of data that are in this window here. So you may or may not have these columns. And if you don't, that's what we need to put in there. So this is a pretty straightforward process. What you're going to do is you're actually going to right click on this top row of headers. Okay, you can click anywhere basically. Okay, and I'm going to click on metadata display. And it's going to give me a lot of different columns in which I can insert into this window. So I'm going to the Premiere Pro project metadata, twirl down, I'm going to open that up. And if you don't have proxy file path, proxy media name, and status, those selected, I'd like you to select those. And I'm actually looking at the instructions, and what Premiere does is they actually do some updating in between versions. They actually update the program every year, so I think this has changed a little bit. So despite what the instructions say, go ahead and just select all three of these if they are not selected, and click OK. And then what you're able to do is you can actually move these around, which is kind of cool. So for your project that you turn in, not project, for your proof of concept, what I'd like you to do is take the proxy column and just drag it as far left as you can, because this will be something that I check for when you turn in your project. I said it again, when you turn in your proof of concept. The other thing I'm going to be looking for are, did you go through and watch the footage and rename all of these files? So you should have unique file names for each of these. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is make a new sequence. Several ways to do this. I'm going to show you two. So there's a magic button down here in the project panel, and it's called New Item. And so when you click the New Item button, it's going to give you several selections. So you can create a sequence, an adjustment layer, bars and tone, all sorts of different things, right? So we're just going to click sequence. Okay, so when we click sequence here, it's going to give us some options. It's going to give us a lot of options actually. So we have HD, 1080p, social, so we can do all sorts of different aspect ratios for social media, 4K, custom, legacy. Just want you to appreciate all the different versions that are out there. It can get kind of wacky, to be honest. Okay, so under HD 1080p, I'm just going to select the first one, and I'm going to name it. I'm going to name the sequence Red Door Pantry Rough Cut, and I'm going to say OK. So once I do that, you'll notice that I now have a sequence in my timeline window. This is great. One thing that it also did was, you'll notice that I have a new entry here, and I have a different looking icon. So this icon that you see, this is for a sequence. This is in the wrong location. So by default, whatever folder you are in, or whatever bin you are in within the project panel, that's where a sequence gets created. So I don't want that. I'm going to come down here and just drag it to sequence. And there it is. Okay, that's great. So the next order of business is to put a couple of shots within the sequence. So I'm going to work with the two shots that I actually renamed. So I'm going to double click here, and you'll see that in my source window, let's see, how long is this shot? So we have a couple of time indicators here. This, what you're looking at, is called time code. Okay, so time code can be read as hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. Okay, time code, and a lot of times is arbitrary. You can set it based on time of day, but a lot of times it just, you can set it to a lot of different things, and I don't even know that we set it up for this shoot, but that's neither here nor there. Regardless, that is time code, right? So you look over here, this is the full runtime, or the in and out duration of this clip. Okay, so this video, I'm going to introduce a new term for you now, and it's called clip. All right, so this clip is 2 minutes and 58 seconds long. I don't want to put 2 minutes and 58 seconds worth of video within my sequence. I want to shorten it up a little bit. So I'm basically taking this playhead and I'm just scrubbing through. So I'm left clicking and I'm holding, and I am just scrubbing through here, right? So let's say I think this looks like some usable footage right here. So I am going to now create an endpoint for this. So several ways to do this. My favorite way is to press the I key on the keyboard. And when I do that, you'll notice that I have a selection that showed up right here within the, I guess, the time indicator, or the timeline within the clip. So I'm going to press my space bar to play. I'm just going to let this run through here. And I'm going to pause right there by pressing space bar again. I'm going to press the O key for out. So I is in, O is out. So I now have an in and an out. And now I took my 2 minutes and 58 seconds and I turned it into 9 seconds and 16 frames. I'm going to place this within the timeline now. So what I'm going to do is just come up here to the middle of the picture. I'm going to left click and hold. And when I do, you'll see that my icon turns from a pointer to a fist or hand that's grabbed the footage. I'm going to take it and I'm going to drop it right here. And then it's going to ask me a question. It says, this clip does not match the sequence settings. Change the sequence to match the clip settings. And I'm going to say, yes, please change the sequence settings. Okay, there was a very slight mismatch between this footage that I shot and the actual settings for the sequence. And so what happened was it changed those settings for me, so now it will match completely. Okay, there are times in which you do or do not want to do that. That's more of a complex question. We'll get into that in more detail later in the semester, but for right now, just realize that's probably a good thing to do. Okay, and here's my next one. And let's see here. So this is basically a wide shot of the same action. And so I can think that, you know what, I probably want to show this right after we cut away from that tighter shot. So I'm going to place an endpoint right there, space bar to play, and press out or press O for out, come in, and then place my two shots. So this is my timeline. And you'll notice that these clips look really small. I can zoom in, and it's relatively easy to zoom in. What I'm going to do is click on this little slider right here. As I do, you can see these shots in more detail now. So I'm just going to play. And we'll see what that looks like. So my timing was a little off. It doesn't really matter for this. What is important though is that I got two clips in my sequence. And so the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to take some screenshots. So there's two things that we need to show here in our screenshot. And really, I think both of the things that we need to show can be accomplished in one screenshot. If you're on a Windows machine, easy way to take a screenshot is just to go into your program settings or your program selection, and I'm just going to select snipping tool. Okay, click new, and I can just come up here and I can left click and drag. And so once I do that, this window appears and this is my screenshot. And what I want to do is save it. And for right this moment, I am going to save this in my hard drive or on my hard drive. I think it's probably okay to say either one of those. Put it in module 2, and just for good measure, I'm just going to call it Jones module 2 screenshot. I don't care about that, and I'm going to save it. And so within this, you'll see that I have my proxy. I can see that that's attached, and then I can also see I have two clips here. I want to show you just one more thing, actually two more things before we go. And that is, I said there are multiple ways to create sequences, and this is true, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these clips, in this case I'm just going to grab this one, I'm going to left click and I'm going to drag it down to the new item button. And as I do that, you'll see that a little plus sign appears next to my grabbed hand cursor. When I release that, it makes a new sequence. It makes a new sequence with all of the settings correctly selected for the type of footage that I'm working with. It also by default names the sequence the name of the file. However, the only downside of this is it puts it right next to your footage, so you're going to have to move it into your sequence folder. Okay, and so there is that. So the last thing that I want to show you is how to turn your proxies off and on. Okay, so we have here a button. It's called Toggle Proxies. If you don't have this button on your display of buttons, not to worry, it's very easily, you can easily put it in there by clicking this plus button. So if you don't have the button, basically you'll just drag it from here and then drag it into your tool bin here, and then you'll click OK. And so from there, here's how to toggle a proxy. If the button is not selected, your full res footage is being used. If the button is blue, that means your proxies are in use. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Let's see if we can actually see a difference, especially on a screen recording, but possibly. So yep, I can see a difference here. As I'm recording this, I'm hoping you can too. So that's the full res media, that's proxy. Full res and proxy. One thing you don't have to worry about though is if you are using proxies, whenever you go to render out your final file, Premiere will automatically turn them off for you. So that's not a problem. Okay, that's all I wanted to show you for this lesson. Let's pull this back in and take a look. Again, the screenshots, we can do this in one screenshot. Just make sure that I can see that you have proxies attached and that you have a Red Door Pantry rough cut sequence with 2 shots inserted into that. That's your proof of concept for the day. And other than that, I hope you have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.